imagine growing up in the foster system, then being homeless as a young person, to then qualifying and getting a contract with a professional sports team, then building successful businesses, only to almost lose those because you get COVID and are on a ventilator for 6 months and almost die, to then rebuilding it all 5 to 6 times greater than it was before, yet rebuilding it by only working 2 days a week because you work that smart and that efficiently. Well, my guest today, Phil Pelucha, is going to tell you all about that. And it's a wonderful interview. And he's got that amazing British sense of humor. You're going to really enjoy this one. Phil is the tough love tycoon. He's best known for his mantra, "I swear because I care." His rocky start to life in the social system and on the streets was abruptly reversed by a full scholarship to a sports and talent school, which is why he says football saved his life. Phil took advantage of that opportunity, earning a master's degree in international sports law, as well as achieving pro athlete status. His relentless pursuit of victory as an athlete taught him lessons and analogies he uses in business today, including the theory of winning money versus making money. And we'll talk about that. He has since helped thousands build authority through his network and reach peak levels of success while defeating the Goliaths of their industry. So without further ado, Phil, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun, I can tell.
Oh my gosh, we're going to have a good time. You have a really varied background, and you're an open book, as you said, and I love that we can just kind of get right in. You started in the foster system, and it was football that got you out of that. And based on your accent, of course, we're talking about football, soccer, not American football. Yeah,
the one with the foot and the ball,
yeah, exactly,
rather than the hand and the egg. Yeah,
this is so true. Somebody else the other day was just telling me, like, our football being called football makes no sense. But
no, exactly. But it's fine. Yeah. So soccer for most of the world, football for me, definitely
football. So talk about this. So you're in the foster system. Where and when, and then what happened?
So originally I was raised by my grandmother on my mother's side, who is a saint, wonderful woman. She is responsible for the man that I am today. I truly believe that. But she passed away, sadly, when I was 9. She developed motor neuron disease, which is just torturous to watch somebody go through. And I then went back to live with, well, I'll say back, I never lived with her, but I went to go and live with my mum, who at the time had just had a newborn baby. She had a relationship with my stepfather, both of whom were very abusive. There was a lot of drugs. There was a lot of violence. It was a really bad situation. So I was constantly in and out of the foster care system. It was almost like a pass the parcel. I used to joke that they were always fighting about custody over me, and eventually one of them was going to lose and have to keep me because mum didn't want me at home, so they'd take me into the foster system. But then the foster system would say, listen, if he comes in here, he's destined for prison or jail. He's from prison or the grave, right? Yeah. He's not going to achieve anything. We need to keep him as far away from the system as possible because he isn't that person. Send him over there. In fact, it was kind of summed up quite nicely by my my head of year. So I got kicked out of school at 14, which is funny now because I've been collecting degrees like Pokemon cards. But I hated high school. And my head of year and my final school report after I'd been expelled, the final line, in fact, I've included it in my book, is, "There is nothing that endears me to Philip. Quite frankly, there is nothing to like. Of this, I am certain. He will either be 100% infamous or 100% famous. I am unsure which." And that kind of summed it up because, I mean, forever the optimist, I didn't know what that meant. So I asked somebody, I said, what does infamous mean? And they said, they're basically saying you're going to be famous or a famous criminal. I was like, but she thinks I'm going to be famous, right? And they're like, that's an interesting take on it. But yeah, let's go with the positive. Yes, she's saying you're going to be successful and famous, just potentially a successful criminal. But yeah, so there was a lot of back and forth. And then at 14, when I got kicked out of school, that was pretty much the end of it. I got kicked out of home as well. So I was actually homeless for a period of time. And when I say homeless, I mean couch surfing, park benches, and under railway bridges. So proper homeless, not sleeping in my car homeless. There was no car. And you know, the one thing I'd always remained really good at was being able to use my body, being able to use my voice. So I'd done a lot of acting, a lot of singing, and a lot of football. And I heard about this open trial in Manchester to get into one of the Manchester sports academies. And I went to this open trial, and I literally slept under a bridge down the road for 2 days for this 2-day trial, because otherwise I was never going to be able to get there and back. And I got awarded this scholarship. I got through because it was almost like a casting thing. So every day there'd be like 300 kids there, and then the next day that's 200, and then the next day that's 50, and then the next day it's down to 10. And I got offered the scholarship. And I remember being sat in this room with two of the head coaches saying to me, congratulations. So what happens now is, and this is about April time, I think, maybe later, maybe earlier in the year, actually. But it was very early on in the year. And they said, okay, so what happens is in September, you're going to be moved into our student accommodation. You get a maintenance allowance. You're going to, I'm thinking this is changing everything, but where am I going to stay? And then the dreaded question came, which is, where do we send the paperwork? Oh. And I just kind of froze, and they were like, where have you been staying? And very quickly, one of them picked up on this, and I basically just opened up. And I remember sitting there thinking, they're going to pull my scholarship. They're going to say, like, we don't want homeless people in the academy. And I was only young, so I was terrified that was going to be the case. And they went out and said, we'll be back in a minute. And they came back and introduced somebody new. And they said, this is head of player care and housing or something. And I was like, okay, player welfare and housing, that was it. And they said, pick up your stuff. We're taking you to the student house tonight. You start on Monday. And they subsidized me from that moment moving forward.
Wow.
And from that moment on, I've never been homeless. I've never been out of work. It's kind of snowballed from there. So right place, right time, definitely. But there's also an element of creating your own luck, because I could have very easily just said, well, this is my lot now. I'm on the streets. It's about getting some food, getting some drugs, getting some alcohol. Yeah. But even when I was asleep under a railway bridge, I remember saying to myself, it was something that my grandmother instilled in me. It's like, you're better than this. Yeah. You know, tomorrow's another day. Wake up and make strides towards what it is you want to achieve. Don't stay down here. Rock bottom's a terrible place to sit down.
Yeah. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to steal that from your grandmother. I love that. So you became this athlete, and you're being compensated. You're being taken care of. Mm-hmm. What lessons did you take from playing at that level and really, going from being homeless to I am now part of this professional organization?
I think everything has made me successful in business. I learned in sport, and I think people find that really difficult to understand because they see the two as very different. But actually, they're not. They're all about winning. It doesn't matter how good you are at a particular skill set or a particular position. If you're not surrounded by people who are as equally good at their position, at their skill set as you are, you're never going to win a trophy. You know, going back to American football, you can be the world's best quarterback, but if you've not got people blocking you, you're going to have a fractured spleen and a broken spine in about 20 seconds. Yeah. So you can be the best in the game, but if you're not surrounded by people who are equally as good, I think then you're going to miss out. There's one big lesson. The second one that I realized was that actually talent is really the great equalizer. So I remember meeting a lot of people in the academies whose parents were ex-players. Like I remember one guy was running late for training, so his dad brought him in the helicopter. I'm like, I got 3 buses to get here. You know what I mean? They were living completely different lives. But on the field, it was the talent that did the talking. And if you worked hard and you applied your skill set and you were constantly trying to be the best at what you did, I was the one that became vice captain. I was the one that became captain. I was the one that would be leading out the team for big games. It was me. I mean, some of these players were sitting on the bench while I was having the best games of my life. And that's not to mock them, but it is to say that, I think there's a lot of societal pressure when people think, well, this person went to this Ivy League school or this person did this and I could never compete. And actually, we've all heard the saying, what is it? Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. But actually, if you can have both, if you can have talent and work hard, you're unstoppable. Yeah. And that's probably another big lesson that I learned in business, actually, for the third one, which is from sport, which applies to business, is that most entrepreneurs are told wear every hat. You've got to be your sales department, the marketing department, the accounts, you're a bounty hunter chasing unpaid invoices, your delivery, you're the website dude, like you're everybody. And what I've realized is that's just as dumb as asking one player to play every position on the field. Like, that doesn't work. You're going to burn out, you're going to injure yourself, and you're not going to be successful. What you need to do very quickly is identify what your strengths and weaknesses are and work non-stop at your strength and outsource or partner with somebody whose strength is your weakness. That's how you become successful. It isn't trying to say, well, I'm really good at sales but terrible at marketing, so I'm going to plow thousands of dollars into learning marketing and go figure that out. That literally makes no sense to me. It's the complete opposite direction to the way you should be going.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Phil, I've interviewed several athletes, ex-athletes that have played at some of the highest levels on this show. And man, and I've talked about this, some of the listeners are probably bored of me talking about this, but when I've tried to make a correlation between why they were successful in athletics and then also successful in business, the theme that keeps coming up is that in athletics teaches you that failure is how you learn, that failure is okay. And failure is the only way you're going to get better. And that practice is mandated so that you can get better. Where business, we go to school, okay, we're supposed to know it. And by the way, if you make a mistake in school, you're penalized. You're penalized for, you know, and athletes just learn like, no, I know I'm going to fail. Like, I'm fail more than I'm going to win. But you know, I'm just curious if you kind of have that same feeling and trait as well.
So I remember I was probably about 18, maybe 19 years old, and I was playing in Hungary, in Budapest, and I had just had the game of my life, and I was playing fullback at the time, so one of the defenders out wide. So you're not supposed to really influence the game. In fact, I was listening to a friend of mine talk about being a fullback just the other day on a podcast, and he was saying, you know, the thing with Phil was he could rarely win you a game, but he could definitely lose you a game, because it's not usually the fullback that comes on that is expected to be winning the game. But if I mess up, you better believe we're in trouble. So anyway, so I had this really good game. I scored 2 goals and assisted 1, and I got the man of the match performance in a semifinal. And it was to date, it was the best game of my life. And everyone was patting me on the back. It was the first time I'd had to go and do a media interview, and it was great. And I was on cloud 9, as you can imagine. It's like, yes, this is it. And the next day, I came in, and the head coach beckons me into his office, and showing my age now, he puts a VHS tape in the player, and I'm thinking, oh, he's going to show me my highlight reel. This is brilliant. Like, I'm going to get to relive it. And he showed me 25-minute compilation of all the things I did wrong in the game, and I remember leaving the room being like, what an ass. Like, I was just on cloud 9, and you've really brought me down now. And I kind of sulked about it for the rest of the day. And one of the assistant coaches pulled me to one side, and he said, why are you in such a mood? Like, you should be in a great mood. And I told him what had happened. And he said, you've completely misread that situation. He said, he wants that to have been the best game of your life so far. So he's showing you all the areas that you can improve so that next week is even better. And the week after that is even better. You don't learn anything from watching your highlight reel. Watch it when you're retired. Yeah. And I was like, actually, okay, I now get it. And as much as I hated him at the time, now I credit him with probably being my best ever coach, because he would hold up the mirror and make me look at the things that were uncomfortable rather than just allowing me to sit in that area of comfort. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are very uncomfortable with that. Whereas I think as athletes, we are taught that that's part and parcel of the game. And like you said, you're going to lose more than you're going to win. I mean, you're going to get, if you're doing sales, you're going to get a lot more no's than you do yeses. But it's the yeses that you go for. I mean, if we were to use the sports analogy, if every time I missed a shot, I got nervous and stopped taking shots, I was never going to score again. But if I can take 4 shots and miss all of them, my attitude is I've never missed 5 in a row. I'm making this next one. So now I'm full of confidence because of the next one. And I think it is that mirror, I think. And I think there's also the element of, I mean, I love winning, but if I'm really brutally honest with you, the listeners, and with myself, I think I hate losing more than I love winning.
I join you there. I'm right alongside you. Yeah.
So as a result, you know, it's me versus me. I often had competitors. I still do have competitors, but now the person I'm really challenging and competing against is me. And I'm sure we'll touch on that later. Yeah. But as a result, that's where I think that winning attitude and that hunger for failure, because the more you learn more from losing than you do from winning, because there's more to fix.
Yeah, for sure. I love this. Your business, one of your businesses names is Billionaires in Boxers. Billionaires in Boxers.
Mm.
And I just feel like that's got a good story behind it. So where tell us about that.
So it was an accident, actually. It was kind of a joke where the name came from. So we got picked up. International radio station, which already had a name, got picked up by a TV company. So I was going to be doing our very first ever TV series. And they're like, we need a new name for the show because the name you currently have belongs to that radio station, so we can't take it. And everything I suggested, they hated. And Roger, when I say they hated it, I don't mean like they disliked it. I mean like I was pretty close to being banned from naming my own TV show. So I just did what I often do in that situation and start joking around and playing around. And one of the suggestions I came out with was, how about Billionaires in Boxers? Because we grow global empires from home and I rarely put on pants. And they were like, that's amazing. We're using that. And I'm like, no, it's a joke. So we did the pilot and the first episode we did a promo for it. And it was in South Africa. We were in Pretoria. And I had a shirt, tie, suit jacket, shoes, black socks, and a pair of boxer shorts walking down the town hall steps to go and do the show. And before we knew it, people kept associating me as the Billionaires in Boxers guy. Like that was what people recognized us as. Yeah. And I'd never had a name like that people had just instantly resonated with and either found funny or wanted to share what it meant to them. And to this day, I still love that about this name. So after probably about 3 to 6 months, we did a complete rebrand of all of our businesses, our sports business, our consulting business, our broadcast business, and our real estate business. And we brought them all under the umbrella of Billionaires in Boxers. And it's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. Plus, if I'm being really truthful, I love the fact that it's my sense of humor in the name. Yeah. So every time people talk about it in like such a, I mean, the way the media do, and they're like, oh, business consultant of the year, doing a consultancy, doing this. And I just can't help but smile to myself because it's such a ridiculous name that we picked. And they're talking about it in such a serious manner. And it's like, it's just fun for us. So, it was a joke and it still makes me smile.
And if we can, that's a great story. That's a great story, Phil. And people do take themselves in business way too seriously. So I love to hear,
definitely.
Yeah, that you roll with it. And if I'm correct in my notes, you reach over 50 million homes worldwide with the media company. That's wow.
Yeah. So during COVID, so we always had the podcast network. I've been podcasting for about 14 years now. I've grown and sold 2 podcast networks. And podcasting for us was always like a VIP networking tool. We could always meet people we wanted to meet. So I always say the great thing about a podcast is you either learn or you earn. And that's what I love about it. Yeah. And we'd always been using it as this VIP tool. I mean, to give your listeners an example, when I first started my headhunting firm, I'd left the corporate world. I had a great reputation. And I realized that as soon as you set up on your own, it means jack. Nothing. Like it was the business name on the business card that was opening the door, not my name. So suddenly I kind of thought all this business is going to come flooding into me, and it just didn't. So now I'm trying to learn things that every other entrepreneur listening to this will be laughing at. So things like, I don't know how to get people on the calendar. I don't know how to sell to people. What do you mean people don't pay their invoices on time? I didn't even know that was a thing. There'd always been like several departments that dealt with that stuff. So suddenly here you are to go in. How do you mean they've had the work and they haven't paid? And people are like, why are you so surprised by this? But it was shocking to me. So what we used to do was I said, how about we use a podcast? So instead of calling the CEO and trying to sell them recruitment solutions, why don't we call the CEO and invite them on a podcast to talk about themselves and their career and what it is they've achieved and what it is they're trying to do? And if we resonate with the person, then we can ask them for help. We can say, hey, listen, here's what it is that we are working on. What is it that you do? How is it we can help each other? And, that really opened a lot of doors, and it really kind of was like pouring gasoline on a fire because nobody wanted to talk about recruitment solutions, but everybody wanted to talk about themselves. Sure. And that's kind of where it progressed from. But then as podcasting became more popular and everybody had a podcast, it became less productive, became less efficient. So during COVID, we found ourselves in a position where there were several TV stations that we were in contact with that were actually airing our shows at the time. And their main way of making money was through sponsorship and advertising. And during COVID, they couldn't get into the studios to record new content, but they also couldn't afford the reruns anymore because the cost of reruns had gone through the roof because, basic economics, supply and demand, everybody's now trying to buy the reruns. Yeah. So these smaller channels are in trouble. And they only get paid advertising and sponsorship for two reasons. Number one, because there's people watching the channel, and they're not if there's no content. And number two, because they are part of a wider network, like a Dish, like a Sky, like a DSTV, somebody like this. But they're contracted to have a certain amount of content that airs on this channel. Otherwise, those contracts get cut. So they were all really distressed businesses. And during that time, I said, you know what? I don't need the sponsorship and advertising money. Why don't we buy these distressed TV stations, satellite TV stations? And what we'll do is we'll change the business model from we no longer care about the sponsorship and advertising. We're now going to use it as a networking tool and a credibility tool for us and our clients so that we're essentially buying a reach. Because if we can now say to our clients, and we do, listen, when you want to meet that person, that event organizer, that potential client, that investor, if you can rock up and say, we have a network that reaches 50 million homes, 40 different countries, and 1 million downloads plus each month. Would you like to come and be my guest? They're far more likely to say yes. And as a result, you now have the right people on the calendar. And I truly believe that business is really simple. You know, if you're speaking to enough of the right people, the right things are going to happen.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So then why are you known as the Tough Love Tycoon?
Why am I known as the Tough Love Tycoon? It's a good question. I'm very blunt, and I used to think that was because I'm British, but actually even British people find me very blunt, so I'm not sure that's true. I like to be very direct with people. I think when I looked at the coaching industry, because I never wanted to be a coach, I think is the first thing I would say. It was never my intention. I kind of got, and I'm not even going to say kind of, I was just dragged into it. I'd sold a couple of businesses, and a few people would come to me and say, how did you win that gig? How did you win that client? How did you get that stage? And I started teaching them, and then they told people who I taught what I taught them, and then before you know it, I'm 2 years in, and I'm like, oh, I'm a coach and consultant now. When did that happen? And the Tough Love Tycoon stuff really came from when I looked around, because I do a lot of competitive analysis. So just like in sports, it doesn't really matter how good we're playing. If I don't know who we're playing on the Sunday and what tactics they're going to play and who they're going to line up, it's going to be really difficult to win that game. And I realized that is missing a lot of the time in business. Like, you ask a lot of small entrepreneurs or small business owners, who are your competitors? And they don't have a clue. Yeah. Or they say something crazy like, oh, yeah, I had one the other day. I won't name the guy, but it really made me laugh. He's a one-man band. He's a consultant. He's been a consultant for about 8 months now, struggling to find his first few clients. He's got a couple, but it's just about keeping the wolf away from the doors. But he's struggling to grow the business. So we're chatting away, and I said, great. So who are your competitors that you would really like to be like? Who is a few steps higher up the ladder than you that you would really like to be like? And he said, IBM and McKinsey. And I was like, okay, so both of them employ over 10,000 people. They're making billions of dollars a year, and they have multiple offices worldwide. You're working from your kitchen counter, just you, and that's who you consider to be your competitor. I mean, I hate to break it to you, but you're going to lose that fight every single day.
10 out of 10 times, yeah.
So, and I don't even need my crystal ball for this. I can predict this perfectly right now. Like, if you're prepared to bet on this, I will become a very wealthy man, except I'm worried you won't be able to pay me my winnings.
Yeah.
So what I found was, when I looked around the industry, is that a lot of coaches give false hope. They sell false hope. It's like, hey, do you know that you can earn 30 grand a month just working 2 days by following my simple 5-step process? And it's like, you never have to do a Facebook ad ever again. And you're like, how are you watching this? Oh yeah, by a paid Facebook ad. And it's ludicrous. Yeah. And it's because there's zero barrier to entry for this industry. So a lot of this, there's nobody qualified here. So a lot of the people in this industry are snake oil salesmen, and it's horrific. And what I realized was, you don't stand out by blending in, and that's not my personality type. I don't want to give somebody false hope. In fact, I said it to you jokingly before we started, but I truly believe that what a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners need is a job. Like, they're not cut out to be entrepreneurs. Yeah. And that's not meant to be mean. Like, it's a tough life. I mean, when it goes bad, it's really bad. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm living in the Caribbean. I work 2 days a week. I run 3 businesses. It's very successful. I love it. But people go, you're so lucky. And it's like, I didn't feel lucky with like a ruptured appendix due to stress and like having to take out credit cards to pay for Christmas and salaries because a client didn't pay. Like, none of that felt particularly lucky. Yeah. So you have to really go through the grind to get to where you need to be. And I don't mean hustle and, work all the hours that God sends. I still believe that you should work smart and plan for success. But I didn't want to be one of these other coaches that's like, everyone can do it. I mean, I won't pick on a name because I might get sued, but like, I don't see the idea of how you can help people run a business by saying, I have a 50x business, shout, I have a 10x business. Like, there's no practical advice there. It's ridiculous. So I'd much rather say to somebody, look, here it is. This bit of your business I like. This bit of your business is crap. This bit over here probably needs some work. This bit we really need to outsource because I know you think you're good at it, but you're not. So where your superpower is here. We need to focus here. We need to get you working here. We need to figure out a business that's going to work for you. And we need to get rid of your shiny object syndrome because you can't keep buying the latest course, the latest software, the latest tech, the latest book, the latest whatever, and try and squeeze it into your model and then wonder why it's not working. Yeah. You know, business is, and this is probably going to come across tough love tycoon. This is when I get blunt. Business actually is really simple. Business is overcomplicated by idiots who want to sell you expensive solutions to the problem that they just created. You know, we don't make any money from our website. I don't do any paid ads. And yet I run 3 businesses that will each make $1 million plus. Right? Because it's about relationship building. So when people are trying to convince you, oh, you need a webinar now. Oh, you're not on TikTok. That's why you don't have clients. And it's just, I just want to put my head or their head through a window. And sometimes I just want to shake somebody and be like, you know how you get rich? You know how you are successful in business? One offer, one avatar, one platform, go. And people really overcomplicate that. It's like, I had a guy I spoke to a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I have 2 clients at the moment, but I'm working 11-hour days. And I'm like, what are you doing 11 hours a day for 2 clients? And he said, no, their work takes like an hour or 2. And I was like, now I'm even more confused. Like, what are you doing for the rest of the day? And he said, well, I had this coach and they said I needed to be producing 5 pieces of unique content across all the social media platforms that I'm on. So I basically spend all my time creating content. And I said, great. How much money has that made you? He went, none. I was like, how long have you been doing that for? He went, about 6 months. And I was like, then should we stop? Because this is common sense. Like, what are we doing? So yeah, I think that's probably where the tough love tycoon came from. It was actually a nickname given me by a client. So was I swear because I care. Because when I get passionate, I'm trying really hard on the podcast, but when I get passionate, I swear a lot. Sure. And sometimes people just need that. I think reality and a dose of honesty. I'm still going to help you. I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to care about you, but I'm not going to play into your delusions. I'm going to, if you're telling me that you're going to go from $0 to $50 million in the first 12 months and you don't have a plan how to get there, I'm probably going to be the guy that pisses on your chips and says, yeah, you're really not. Like, let's have a more realistic target. Let's look at what's going on in the industry. Let's aspire to be at the top of your current league without thinking you're going to win the Super Bowl as a Pee Wee football team, because you're not.
Hey everyone, as you know, I don't have any advertisements nor sponsorships on this podcast. My only ask of you, the listener, is that you share this podcast with someone that you know, a friend, a family member, a coworker, or a colleague who may benefit from this information, may benefit from today's guest, from the value that they're sharing with the audience, with you, the listener. When you share this podcast and our audience grows, it allows me to book more and more guests who have a great message, great nuggets of wisdom that you can benefit from, and again, your network can benefit from. So please, right now, push that share button, send it to somebody that you care about, and let's get back to the interview. I mean, I think that social media and just the amount that people are bombarded with, you've got to have a Lambo, got to have a jet, and by the way, they're always fake. But you got to have all that, and and if you're any older than 23 by the time you buy a jet and have a Lambo, you failed. Where there is something to be said for building and accruing wealth, and doing massive. But it's almost frowned upon, and so now everybody's chasing these false apparitions of I'm gonna make $50 million overnight, which yes, there is an Airbnb, yes, there is an Uber, but there are these unicorns. But that's why they're called a unicorn, because they rarely come around. But
here's a fun stat for you that I learned about a month ago, and when I heard it, and I was like, that's nonsense. Surely I'm gonna go check. And when I did the research and looked into it, and all these very credible institutions who'd done the research, I thought, I'm blown away, which is in North America, businesses. No, let me word this properly. In North America, businesses that employ less than 11 employees will make $1 million plus in revenue only 8% of the time. So only 8% of businesses in North America that employ less than 11 people will ever achieve $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Yet we're being told, like, if you're not a millionaire, you're a fake, you're a fraud.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, what does rich actually mean? I mean, if you make $10 million a year, but you're divorced and you don't see your kids, are you rich?
Yeah.
If you make $500,000 a year, but you work 1 to 2 days a week, you live on the beach and you spend all the time with your family, I consider that person far richer than the 100 million plus, self-made person who is depressed, lonely, overweight, unhealthy, doesn't see their family, doesn't have a relationship with their kids. I mean, like, one is, according to society, is rich, and the other one is poor. And I mean, you're not poor if you got $500,000, but you get what I'm saying. But actually, rich is an internal thing. It isn't a once I achieve $1 million, and believe me, I did this, which is why I'm sharing it. Once I reach $1 million, I'll feel differently. I did feel differently. I felt miserable that it didn't make me feel any better. And I realized that actually all of that stress and all that hard work to try and get to that point was pointless. So what I'd said at the time was, I'm selling that business. I'm going to do something else. I don't even know what that something else is. It turned out to be the coaching and the broadcasting. But I'm going to earn less money, and I'm accepting that. But I only want to work 2 days a week. I want to spend all the time with my kids, and I want us to move somewhere that we can be in the sun all year round. So we live in the Caribbean, in St. Lucia. I work 2 days a week. Here's the irony. My businesses make about 5 to 10 times, depending on the business, more money than we ever made when I was hustling and grinding, working 6 days a week. Because when you ask different questions, you get different answers. How do I still impact as many people, but working 2 days a week instead of working 6 days a week produces very different chemical responses in the brain to how can I make more money? Well, I need to work harder. So take that off the table and start to ask different questions. Honestly, you'll be amazed at what the brain can come up with.
So I love that. Let's go down that path a little bit if we could. Phil, what questions then have you found that do break through that noise and have allowed you, like specific questions that have allowed you to see it from a different angle, to build something of a different nature than I'm just going to work harder. I'm just going to outwork the next guy.
Yeah. One of the really interesting ones was almost like, I don't know whether you have kids, Roger, but my children are now 10 and 8. And I remember when they were both 3 and they would ask why to everything.
Yeah.
It's like, what are we having for dinner? We're having chicken. Why? Because that's what mummy's taking out of the freezer. Why? Why is it in the freezer? Well, because it goes bad. Why does it go bad? Well, because when we buy it from the supermarket, it's going to go bad if you don't store it. Well, why don't we just buy it today? Like, it's all these why questions. And actually, I did the same thing within my own business. So what I started to do is I said, right, I want to earn X amount. Well, why?
Yeah.
Because that's how much we earned last year. Well, why? Well, what did we do with it? Like, why do we need to earn that? And it's like, actually, it's a good point. Why do we need to do that? I want 40 clients. Why? Because last year we had 30. So I want to up it. Why? Yeah, I don't know, actually. I don't know why. So asking myself those questions really kind of made me do 2 things. One of them was it made me completely reevaluate what it was we were doing, because I realized when I get to an end of a thread and go, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why we do that. In fact, very quickly, I'll tell you the second one I said, but it reminds me of, there's a really, it's a terrible joke, but it's a funny story of this woman, and she's learning how to make pot roast. And she goes into the kitchen to watch her mother cook the pot roast, and she cuts off the end of the meat about this much, and she throws it in the trash. And she says, "Why did you cut the end of the meat off the meatloaf, off the pot roast?" And she said, "Because that's the way your grandmother always did it." So she went to the grandmother and she said, "Grandma, why do you always cut the end off the pot roast?" And she said, "Because that's the way my mother used to do it." So she goes to the retirement home and she says, "Great Granny, why do you always cut the end off the pot roast?" And she said, "Because the pan was too small." Right? But that actually reminds me a lot of business. It's like, why do you do this? Because that's the way we've always done it. Yes, but why is that the way you've always done it? Because that's what that guy taught me to do. Right, but why did he do it that way? I don't know. And so it's fascinating how that cycle continues. So that was the first thing, was realizing how ridiculous some of this was. Yeah. The second thing was, I've always had this, in England we call it cheekiness, but this air of curiosity. Like, I always want to test the boundaries. I always want to push stuff slightly further than I should to see just where the breaking point is. I jokingly say to my friends and family that I spend most of my life living in the gray area, because I just want to see what happens. Like, I went into a store a few weeks ago and there was 2 lines of people buying stuff and paying for stuff, but I'd already paid. I was just trying to collect, so I didn't want to stand in line. So I just walked to the front to see what happened. And one of the guys kind of looked at me a bit confused. And I said, I'm just picking up. And he was like, oh, okay, hands me the bag and then leaves. And I was like, everybody else would still be stood in that line, but I've just saved myself 20 minutes by going, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to get to the front and they're going to go stand in line. Well, I'm going to be in that exact same position I was a minute ago. So this sense of curiosity that comes from almost like playing a game with myself. So, okay, last year we did $9 million in the sports business, but it took me 6 months of really hard graft. Do you reckon we can make 10 million, but do it in 2 months? Is that possible? Like, what do we need to do to achieve that? And I always design 3 strategies to get me to this one same location and destination. And the reason I do that is because if one of them falls short, the others are going to kind of pick it up. If they all achieve target, I've hit target 3 times, so I'm now 3 times over. Yeah. If they exceed, oh my days, I mean, like, now we're in cloud 9. But for me, it's always about pushing the bar, because that's exactly what it was like in sport. The very first season, you score 10 goals in a season and get 5 assists. They're like, great. Next season is 20 goals and 10 assists, because they're constantly upping you and challenging you to see how far that bar is and not letting you get complacent. And those 2 things, so those questions of, well, why do we do this? And kind of almost like the toddler mentality of just asking yourself why, combining that with that cheeky element of, I'm just going to see how far we can take this. I'm just going to push this and see what happens. And believe me, sometimes that door gets slammed in your face, but at least you go, oh, well, okay, not that door then.
Wrong door.
Yeah, wrong door.
No.
And one of my clients said this to me. I didn't even realize it said it. This is about only a week ago with that. They said to me, do you know I've got one of your quotes printed out on a poster and put on my wall? I was like, really? Which one? And they said, you said it to me in a one-on-one session. And I said, what was it? And she said, well, I was saying to you that I believe that when God closes a door, he opens a window. And I said, right. And what did I say? And I'll need to be careful how I word this, because I did swear. I said to her words to the effect of, if life closes the door and the window, then smash a big hole in the side of the thing. And she said that was so brilliant, because it was like, just keep going, just push your way through, just don't take no for an answer, just keep going. And that came from that mentality of, well, so what happens if life closes a window and a door? It's like, well, I've got 2 choices. I can either, and we mentioned this earlier, I can either sit down in rock bottom, which is a terrible place to sit down because it's literally the worst place of your life, or I'm going to say, I'm not sticking around in rock bottom. I'm going to bust my way through that wall and break out of this jail cell. And that for me is just kind of how I live my life, how I run my business, and how I encourage my clients to run theirs.
So let me just go one level deeper on, and I don't have the answer to this. I'm just curious your take on it. So you've mentioned, you work 2 days, 3 days a week, and you live in the Caribbean. I love the Caribbean, by the way, one of my favorite places.
Me too. It's beautiful. I love it.
And I love the people. Just love the people.
Yeah, me too.
So, but 2 days of work a week there, and you have these very successful businesses, but people can hear that, and then they fall right back into that social media BS trap of, so Phil, where is it that you had already built a level of wealth that you felt comfortable with, and then you made a conscious decision to say, I actually want to spend more time with my kids. That's more important to me than making another $10 million.
Yeah.
Because I think people will get mixed messages sometimes and say, okay,
sure,
all the really smart people are saying only work 2 days a week, yet they haven't done it yet. So 2 days a week isn't going to get you there.
Yeah. I get your point. Okay, so there's a few things I'd say to that. So number one, I don't think I'd have done it if I hadn't have been forced to. I fell sick and I nearly died of COVID in 2020. So I was on a ventilator for 6 months. It nearly finished me off. I've been left with a lasting heart condition. So actually the 2 day a week thing really was born out of, I don't have the energy to work more than 2 days a week when I was recovering. We actually almost lost everything during COVID because I was ill. I mean, you take the owner who is and an owner operated business as well out of a business for 8 months, and it was like,
yeah.
And then basically the money that I did have left, I spent on buying TV stations that everybody was telling me, you're insane. Like they're about to close. Like what do you do? Like I had one guy call me and he said, I almost feel like we need to stage an intervention. I feel like you've just hit the self-destruct button. I was like, I know what I'm doing. I have a plan. I'm not crazy. And everyone just looked at you like you were crazy. And I remember one of my mentors years ago gave me this quote, and I don't even think it was his, but I really resonated with this quote a lot during this time of my life, which is the same people that ask you why you're doing it will be the same people who ask you how you did it. And I remember thinking, that's a really good point. And then the more that started to happen, like the guy who told me he needed an intervention came and asked me whether I could teach him to do what we've just done. So there's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is we're actually now more successful and profitable than we ever were when I was working 6 days a week. So, and I think the logic behind that is that in sports, you have fitness days, recovery days, gym days, and then you have a game day, which is peak performance. But I couldn't possibly be expected to be peak performance game day multiple times a week or even multiple times a day in some situations. It's just not possible. So I run my business like I ran my professional sports career. Today is a strength and conditioning day. So it's about learning and getting myself where I need to be. Tomorrow is a meditation and relaxation day. I have a massage therapist that comes to my house twice a week on my 2 days that I have my rest days. I meditate, I swim with my children, I get a massage, I do nothing else. I'm so lazy on those days because I need to be, because the next day is my peak performance day and I'm going to crush that day and I'm going to crush it in 4 or 5 hours. And I'm going to achieve more in those 4 or 5 hours than most people have achieved the whole week because they're trying to run it at 20-25% energy. And I'm coming into this game on a Thursday with 100% energy going, watch this. Right. So and you often see that in sports, particularly in football. I think you see it in other sports too. But when they make a substitution, particularly like late into a game, the opposition are tired. They've been running around for like 70 to 80 minutes, and this new person comes on fresh and they're running rings around people. That's how I see business. Let everybody else tire themselves out for the first part of the week. And when I rock up on a Thursday, it's all mine to clean up because they're all exhausted. I'm 100%, they're not. And so whilst I appreciate what it is you're saying, I would actually say it wasn't that I got to a certain level of financial success. In fact, the financial success probably came like as we have our life today as a result of those changes. If I had my time again, I'd never do those 5-6 days a week. Never. Because it was counterproductive. I look at what I achieved then and what I achieve now, and we call this internally our rebuild, because we had to rebuild after COVID because everything was just belly up. I think we went from, in one of our businesses, we were generating about 60 to 80,000 a month in just pure hard profit, and that went down to about $500. And I still had salaries to pay, and I still had people to take care of, and I still had a family and my wife's family and anybody else who we take care of that we're responsible for, right? And I didn't want to downsize any of that. So what I said to myself was, okay, I've accepted we're not going to grow anymore, but I need to get back to that level. And how do I get to that level, but working 2 days a week instead of working 6? And like I said, the irony is we're now 5 to 10x in each individual business what we would have been achieving working those 6 days a week. And I feel better for it. So whilst I hear what you're saying, my rebuttal, if you will, would be, I wish I had that time again, because I wasted so much time working 6 days a week that I didn't need to. You need to be disciplined and you need to have strategy. So when I'm saying work 2 days a week, you can't be lazy during the 2 days a week that you work. You can't be having pointless conversations and wasting your time saying, oh, I'll spend 6 hours trying to figure out WordPress then to change my website. Like I'm talking core activity, like core. I call it core Phil time. Yours is core Roger time, right? What is the core insert your name time? What is my superpower that are the things that I can do for my business that nobody else can, because that's all I'm going to do during my 2 days, and anything else I'm going to partner, I'm going to outsource. And I always get this as a follow-up question, which is, what if you don't have the money to hire somebody? That's where partnerships and collaborations come in. Like I love talking to people and selling. I have a friend of mine who is really good at course creation, hates people, hates them. Like, I don't even know how he manages to talk to me. He detests people. Like, he started a podcast and he said to me, you know what? He said, I genuinely hope they no-show every single time. And when they turn up, I always have this feeling of, oh God, now I've got to talk to someone, right? So I said, so why don't we do this then? Why don't you stack offer what it is that you're doing inside our offer? Because I love talking to people and helping people. I'll go sell it and position it, and you just deliver it. And since then, we split the money 50-50. That partnership probably generates $500,000-$600,000 a year each for us both.
Yeah.
He's getting to play his superpower. I'm getting to play my superpower. No money was exchanged. I've not hired him. He's not hired me. It's just a partnership because he recognized he's really good at scoring the goals. I'm really good at setting the goals up. He hates setting up the goals, and I hate scoring them. So you stay in the box and score the goals. I'm just going to stand here and whip the ball in.
Love it.
Great. We both win.
I love it. I love it. You also have a quote, visibility plus credibility equals profitability. Visibility plus credibility equals profitability. Kind of speak to that, please.
Yeah, so it changes somewhat. So it depends on who you're talking to. So visibility plus credibility equals profitability is definitely aimed at people who need more money in the bank. I think the next stage to that is visibility plus credibility equals legacy, which is, you know, a lot of people have achieved good things in their business, in their career, and whatever, but they get to like 50 plus years old and they start going, what was the point? You know, I'm not getting the recognition I deserve. I feel like I have so much more offer to value people, things that I can share with them, and nobody knows I exist. I feel like my industry's best kept secret. I've got all this credibility, but no one knows about it. So what was the point? And that's why you find a lot of, you know, entrepreneurs, particularly around that age demographic, I'd say sort of 55 plus, they'll start writing books again, and it'll be about their career and their journey. Yeah, exactly. but it happens because you get to that stage of your career where you're like, this can't be all it was about. I have more to share. Like I want to leave a legacy. I don't just want to be a name on a tombstone. I want to be, that guy changed the industry. That guy did this. That guy brought me this. That guy gave me this information. You know, here's 50 years worth of information that I've collected with advice and stuff that works. And to use the example we gave before, doors not to try. Don't open that damn door. Believe me. I opened it. It took me 5 years to close it again. Right. So that information is really powerful. So the whole idea behind visibility plus credibility equals profitability or legacy is really simply that most business owners have some form of credibility, whether that's from their corporate world or they have clients who love them, they get some repeat business, but outside a very small circle of influence, nobody knows they exist. So what they're looking for is visibility. Now, we live in an attention economy. So one of the problems with visibility is everybody's telling you, get yourself on TikTok, create loads of content, start a podcast, start a TV show, like just get yourself out there, right? But visibility for the sake of visibility is pointless. I'm a firm believer in it's better to be famous for 50 of the right people than 5 million of the wrong. Sure. And when I say that, as you just did, most people agree. But then when I say to them, great, so who are those 50 people for you and what's your strategy to get in front of them? It's like rabbit in the headlights. They have no idea what I'm talking about. It's like, so what are you doing to get in front of those people? I'm producing 5 TikTok videos a week. Right. That's great. I'm writing a blog. Okay. And you're just kind of hoping that this person's going to stumble across it and like it, or you're hoping they're going to hear you on a podcast and be like, there's the person I've been looking for. I was like, that doesn't work. Like, that's like sitting at home, eating Ben and Jerry's in your pajamas, sitting on the sofa going, when's the love of my life going to show up? It's like, well, unless they're the Uber Eats guy, they're probably not showing up to your house, right? So you need to go somewhere, give the universe a chance to create the opportunities, which is why I believe we create our own luck. But that's where I think a lot of people struggle, because they really misunderstand what the visibility piece is. And when it comes to credibility, often I meet someone and I meet them on a phone, and Roger, this is crazy, but I meet someone and I'm like, this person's brilliant. Like they're so amazing. I can see who they are. I can see what they do. The stuff that they've achieved is amazing. I could talk to this person all day. And then I go on their website and their LinkedIn profile, and I'm like, who's this? Because this is not the person I just met. So you have all this credibility, but you don't know how to package yourself as an authority. You don't know how to put that out there in a way that doesn't say, hey, look at me, I'm amazing, and takes that really cocky attitude, but that actually demonstrates who you are, what you can do, and why people should be having a conversation with you. And by combining those two things, which is that authority-based positioning, plus the spotlight so that the 50 right people are on your calendar and have the opportunity to see this, your legacy and your profitability will grow exponentially. But so many people are putting all of their eggs into one basket. It's like, oh, I'm just going to have a referral-based business because I'm just going to hope for credibility. And it's like, I get it, but like referral business is amazing, but it's really hard just to run with that, because how are you going to forecast referrals? You don't know what you're closing next month. You've got no idea. But the same is true the other way, which is they're spending no time focusing on positioning themselves in authority. They're just taking a course or an out the box. You pay me $2,000 a month and I'll show you how to be an expert on LinkedIn. And your profile looks and sounds like everybody else. And then you wonder why you're not getting different results.
Yeah.
So that's where that whole visibility plus credibility equals profitability and legacy comes from.
I love it. Well, really eloquent answer. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. So you talked about a couple of your days being strength and conditioning, or in business terms, learning days. And anybody that listens to my show knows I'm an avid reader. I consume books. I love them, which is funny because I didn't as a kid. I learned to love them later in life.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I
respect that.
Yeah, and would appreciate your insight if you could share with the listeners 1 or 2 books that you've read. It could be recently, it could be 30 years ago, that when you set it down, you said, wow, that really changes the way I think about something. And probably even a book that you've gone back to maybe a couple times. It doesn't have to be business, but I'd be curious if there's 1 or 2 that you could recommend, the title and author to the listeners.
It's going to sound awful because I'm going to recommend 2 from friends of mine,
Sure.
but actually the irony is one of them I read the book because I knew him. The other one I know him because I read the book and I went and met him.
Okay.
And we've become friends ever since. So the first one I would say is a relatively new book, only a couple of years old, by a guy called Todd Herman, who wrote the book, The Alter Ego. I think it's The Alter Ego Effect.
Okay.
You can't miss it. Bright yellow cover with a pair of black glasses on it. Bloody brilliant. So what he essentially talks about in that book is the mask that you wear when you step onto the field. When you look at athletes and they're playing in front of stadiums of 80,000 people, the person that they have to be to cope with that pressure. And it's allowing you to create your own alter ego, create your own superhero. So Clark Kent rips off the glasses and opens up his shirt and suddenly he's Superman. So what's that version for you? Because if me as an individual, if I step out onto a stage and there's 10,000 people there, I'm going to freak out. I have such bad imposter syndrome. I'm going to walk onto that stage and be like, in about 5 minutes, 10,000 people in my industry are about to find out that I'm full of crap. Like that's what's going on in my head. But my alter ego is I love being on stage. These 10,000 people that are seeing 10 people today, they're not here seeing 10 people today. They're here for me. This is the one they've been waiting for. So I got to deliver. I got to go out there and I'm going to have some fun with this because I don't know when the next time, just like I did in sports, I never knew when the last time I was going to step on that sports field was. I don't know when the next time I was going to, when's the next time I'm going to step into a TV studio? When's the next time I'm going to step onto this stage? When's the next time I'm going to speak at this event? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah. So I'm going to enjoy every single bit of it. But I learned to do that in sports, but Todd really gives you a step-by-step blueprint of how to do that in that book. Having interviewed and worked with athletes and entrepreneurs alike, I think it's a really good book for helping develop a superhero mindset that you can take on and off. Yeah. I think that's great. Yeah. It's a great book. The other one's probably at the beginning, actually, of your entrepreneurial journey. There's a book by a friend of mine, Daniel Priestley, who wrote a book called The Entrepreneurial Revolution. It's an older book now, by older, like 15, 20 years maybe. But it talks about how we're moving away from, we no longer live in a society that our parents did, where you worked at the same company for 40 years and left with a gold watch and a pension. Like that doesn't exist anymore. And that entrepreneur revolution is, you don't have to be the entrepreneur, but you can be part of that startup. You can be part of that journey. You can play part of that role on the field, or you might be the individual that is like, screw this, I'm building my own thing. I'm going to be the captain of my own ship. And it gives you kind of some advice as to how to do that. But I really love the entrepreneurial revolution because I'm not a big fan of the education system. And I feel like it kind of is the antidote for some of the things that we were taught or mistaught being raised in schools. No copying, no cheating, no comparing answers, no swapping papers. Like it's kind of the opposite of that. It's no. That's how you get ahead in business. Like it's ask the people who know. It isn't like don't look at my homework. It's like you're an idiot. Why am I going to copy your homework? You don't know, right? But that guy that does know, that aces every test, yeah, you better believe I'm going to ask him or her. Listen, what the hell's going on with this? Or even better, do you just want to do this test for me? I know you suck at math. I'll do your maths paper. You do my science paper. What do you say?
Exactly.
Like. that's how business works, but that's not how we're taught in school. So as a result, I think that's a really good book for somebody to read, because it's either going to light that fire inside you and make you go, I'm doing this, I'm ready to be an entrepreneur, or you're going to read it and go, actually, I don't think my 9 to 5 is so bad. Like I'm gonna stay here.
Yeah.
And that's cool either way.
Yep.
It's completely cool either way. Like everybody has a place. Not everybody on the sports field can be the captain or the quarterback, right? It doesn't work that way.
Yep.
So, but do you think the guy who wasn't the quarterback, he's a linebacker instead, really cares when he's wearing his Super Bowl winning medal, like and earning what, like $400,000 a week? Like, this guy doesn't care,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
So I think those are the two books. So The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman and The Entrepreneurial Revolution by Dan Priestley. I think they're the two that I would recommend people to read.
Great
Other than mine, of course.
Yeah, no, great recommendation. All right, just last couple questions. So, and these are kind of fun. So if we fast forward to the end of your life and you have lived you've taken an interesting path, right? And we fast forward to the end of your life and we're there at your funeral and you're looking down from above or from wherever, and
hopefully not below.
Yeah, exactly.
looking up.
You're the first person to ever say that. That's funny. That's good. And a loved one is reading your eulogy. And Phil, they're allowed to pick 3 words, and they could, they're just descriptive words, like any 3 words they want to choose that describe the life that you lived, the impact you had on them or the world. What 3 words do you hope that they choose to describe your life?
Wow, it's a deep question. Rebellious, loving, funny.
I like those 3 words. Those are good. It's good. There's no right or wrong answer, of course, but I like that. Rebellious, loving, and funny.
They're the 3 for me, because I everything I do has a hint of rebellion in it, and I encourage my clients to do the same, and I definitely encourage my children to do the same. I'm a very loving person. I have a big heart, and I wear my heart on my sleeve. It's why I don't play poker, because I don't have a good poker face. When I like you, when I don't, you really know. Yeah. I'm not subtle, unfortunately, even though some cases it would be quite helpful if I was, because I'm 6'2", I'm really big, and I have a really, really charismatic and active face. So if I don't like something, it's like a giant beacon going, this guy thinks you're an idiot. I don't get to hide, unfortunately. Yeah. Or fortunately, who knows? Loving, I think, is a big one. I really want people to, I always lead with my heart. I make a lot more decisions with my heart than I do with my head. Sometimes they work out well, sometimes they don't, but I never regret the decision, provided I followed my heart. And then laughter, fun is a big one. Yeah. I think a happy home is a home that's full of laughter. I'm very proud of the fact that there's always a lot of laughter going on in our house. I love the fact that a lot of my clients, if you look at our recommendations, will tell you he's tough, he's direct, but his sessions are a lot of fun. Yeah. Like, we learn a lot and they're fun. Like, somebody said to me, they worked with me for 2 years now. They said, I've never done a masterclass session with you and not left laughing my head off. I was like, well, that's charming. Just laugh at what I'm doing. He's like, no, it's because the way you deliver stuff is just, this is supposed to be fun, guys. It's a game. Business is a game. Let's have some fun with it. So yeah, I think those 3 words, I would be very proud of. Those 3 words were the words that I was remembered by.
Great. And then second to last question before we find out how people can get a hold of you and follow you. If I were to give you a magic wand, Phil, and you can wave that magic wand and change the world in one way, just one way, but you can change it and the world is forever different that way. If I gave you that magic wand and you wave that tonight and we wake up tomorrow, how is the world different according to Phil?
Wow. That's a deep question. I'm going to go with the first answer that came to me, because I like I said, I follow my gut.
Yeah.
I would change the education system to encourage people's differences rather than trying to iron them out. I think a lot of the damage is done. I think the school systems in particular were designed pretty much during the Industrial Revolution to create workers, and now we are trying to be creative thinkers, and technology is moving so quickly. AI is moving at a rapid pace. Technology is there to enhance the human experience. And I feel like schools are really letting our young people down when they're graduating, when they're leaving. They're not prepared for the world that exists. They're prepared for a world that no longer existed 20 years ago. And I meet so many great entrepreneurs later in life who I think could have had so much more of an impact on the world, on their family, on their bank balance, on their careers, on everything else, if they've just had that self-confidence, but it was beaten out of them at school.
Yeah.
So honestly, I think I don't know what that looks like exactly, but I feel like if we could wave a magic wand and we could have an education system that encouraged people to embrace their uniqueness and really work on that, and we did like group grade cards where every year you'd pick a team of 5 and you'd pick your subjects and each of you would go off and get an A in your respective subject and then come back and report. I think the world would be an incredible place if people were just allowed to embrace who they were and go for those goals that mean a lot to them, rather than being forced to, you need to memorize these dates so that you can pass these exams, because it's doing a lot of damage. And quite frankly, having some nieces and nephews who are currently exam age, it's putting them under a complete unnecessary amount of stress as well. Like, you are stealing somebody's childhood in return for stress and anxiety for something that in the grand scheme of things doesn't actually mean anything.
Yep, that they won't use. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Great. Well, the most important question is, you've just dropped some great nuggets of wisdom, and you've made it fun as well as your claim to fame. So how can people follow you, connect with you, learn more about you, and just be part of your journey?
Yeah, it's great. Thank you. LinkedIn's probably a good place to connect.
Okay.
Definitely, because we post a lot of our content on there, or at least links to where you can go and watch our content. Thankfully, we're the only ones with Billionaires in Boxers. So if you want to go and Google it, you'll find all of our links and all of our channels anyway. But yeah, LinkedIn's probably a good place. Plus, I'll let you in a little secret. LinkedIn's the only social platform I actually manage myself. I don't even have the others on my phone. So if your intention is to talk to me or ask me something, LinkedIn's going to be the place to do it.
LinkedIn. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you taking the time today. And I thoroughly enjoy. I'm glad you didn't no-show. I'm really glad you didn't.
Me too. Me too. No, well, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure. I love conversations like this. I mean, we were talking off air before we came on about who listens to the show. And quite frankly, I feel like I'm really glad I've got to share this information, because if I could have my time over again, the two things that I would do completely differently is I would be working 2 to 3 days a week from the beginning, and I would very quickly go and find mentors rather than trying to figure out all this stuff myself. And if someone ever pulls the rug from under my feet, God hopefully they don't, that's how I will rebuild. I will rebuild in that exact way.
Yeah.
And if somebody can start their career that way, I mean, you're standing on the shoulders of giants. You're taking something that's taken me a couple of near-death experiences and a lot of heartache to figure it out. So take it, run it, own it, run with it, and put it into play for you and your business.
Love it. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.